Hey y'all, I'm Dan Hamilton, host of the Next Gen Warrior Show. As always, the Next Gen Warrior Show is brought to you by Chairman George P. Bush and the Texas Veterans Land Board. We are coming to you again from the home studio, Southwest Austin, Texas. At the home studio, the hair is a little bit longer. There's a little bit of facial hair that doesn't really look that great, but hey, it's a quarantine lifestyle right now. My next guest is Justin Finley, joining me from Corpus Christi. Justin, your family has a really storied military tradition as well as yourself. For the audience at home, tell us a little bit about your military service as well as your family's commitment and a long storied career of serving the nation.
Sure. First of all, Dan, thanks for having me, and thank you for your service, and any veterans listening or frontline responders, medical field and what have you. Thank you very much for your service. On a side note, I spoke with a friend of mine, Travis Wheat, this morning, President and CEO of Wheat Energy Partners. He mentioned meeting Commissioner Bush in Amarillo a few weeks back and had a great experience. So on behalf of our industry, thank you very much for all y'all are doing. You're right. I started as an operations engineer, petroleum engineer from Texas Tech in Dallas. Spent a few years doing that before I went into the Navy. I was based in Coronado, California. I got out, I came back home. I currently have one cousin serving in the Marines, two that have recently got out. My father was a frogman, UDT 21, Team 2. My grandfather, both of them served in the Navy as well. One in the South Pacific during World War II and the other in Korea. My grandmother, interestingly enough, was on Admiral Nimitz's staff during the World War II. Her father was a captain and Navy Cross recipient during World War I for his actions. And so his brother was admiral as well, receiving the Navy Cross. So we have a rich storied history, very proud of it, and it's instrumental in every aspect of our lives.
So I'm interested to know, but before we started this conversation or recording here, we had a great conversation on the phone where you told me about a 2-year experience where you were kind of, born and bred into the business, but you actually spent 2 years doing almost every single job across the nation that Fesco had to offer. Tell us about those 2 years, what you learned about business, what you learned about people, and even maybe what you learned about yourself.
Sure. Well, I think it's important to rewind a little bit, high-level overview. My grandfather started Fesco in 1949, was active CEO for 69 years up until his passing in September of 2018. His philosophy and the culture he instilled was you need to be in front of your personnel. You need to be around. You can't be in some high-rise while your men are out there, men and women out there busting their tails. So every leader within Fesco has gone through the route of being out in the field first, our VPs, our president. And so that was important coming back in. I came back at around 31 years old. So I had spent years as an operations engineer. I worked for rigs with my uncle in high school, so did my brother. My brother works for us in sales in Houston, and he spent 2 years on the drilling rigs as well. So coming in and understanding who you're working with, what they're working for, the sacrifices they're making, the lifestyle, which is a difficult one, the sacrifices, the strain on relationships, the physical strain of getting up early, going to bed late, being out in South Texas, the West Texas heat in FRC clothing, which is all long sleeve, the risk of dehydration. We're working up in the Northeast Appalachia region, Ohio, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, where some mornings it's a negative 20 wind chill, and getting after it. So it was important to come in knowing that eventually there'd be a more of a leadership role, but to be able to come in and understand that you slept in the trailers with these guys when they're snoring, or you swung hammers with them all day, CrossFit workout, getting pipe, getting a job ready to go, and you understand what their mindset is. So if there comes a time where you have to turn around a job because somebody's been gone for 3 months and it's their child's birthday, well, we're going to turn that job down so they can go and spend some quality time. We're not in the industry to ruin families. It's a tough enough job. So we wanted to, or the outline for my entrance and back into the company was to spend time understanding, not to be a professional. We got professionals there, but just to understand, be a jack of all trades and understand the lifestyle that these men and women are living.
So for those who aren't in the oil and gas industry, I haven't spent any time in it, but it is a very physically, mentally demanding job, as well as the demands on, the family. As you talked about, the men and women who are working on these rigs are sometimes away for their families for extended period of time. Was there something maybe that you learned about yourself during that time that you didn't? Did you enjoy it at sometimes? I know it's a demanding job, but I feel like there are some people who enjoy some of the stress. They enjoy the pressure. They enjoy, getting dirty and having a job and finishing that job and feeling good about it. Can you talk about some of the ups and downs and what it's like out there?
Sure. First of all, it's not for everyone. We've tried to hire some engineers to come in, some with military backgrounds, and do a even shorter version of what I went through, that just they couldn't get out there and do it. It was just it's a humbling experience, especially if you come from an engineering background or similar, to go out there. I thought it was fantastic. I had a great time, close with our personnel. It was a great experience. I think nothing surprised me out there. I was mentally prepared going into it. I knew what it was going to take. I knew the duration. I knew what the objectives were to accomplish. I think what I took away is, when you get into that corporate leadership position and you try to assume what's best for the personnel, it's probably best to go to them directly. The assumptions that we make that would benefit them aren't always particularly in line with what they're looking to gain or what's best for them and their family. And so to be able to go have that conversation with them, look, we're looking at making a couple of adjustments. What are your thoughts? And you get a different perspective, and it removes that disconnect that it sometimes happens.
The current oil and gas environment is very difficult. We've seen prices come down. We've seen a price war between the Saudis and the Russians. The impacts from COVID of just people staying home. There is less demand. Fesco has been around for more than 70 years. So what type of discipline has that taken, or what type of discipline, does it take for you guys to maintain and stay steady during all the ups and downs over decades of business?
Sure. Well, it takes a consistent vision over 71 years, 9 decades. The vision and the culture is instilled, and that doesn't mean you don't take audibles or make some pivots. But our company was built for this time frame. It wasn't necessarily designed for the crash in 2015 and 16 with a small recovery to go into an even worse economic time. But compared to our peers, we were designed for this. So this is a moment where you kind of burn the ships and you get after it. There's no going back. We don't have a parachute to save us. And so we've taken a conservative approach over 71 years, zero debt. We've got the finest.
Can I pause you there real quick? Because I want to park on a couple different things. You talked about, let's just go from here. Having zero debt is something that is sets you apart, not only in your industry, but maybe across all American industries. What have you guys done from a leadership perspective to maintain the financial health of your business?
Well, it comes from the top. It really does. My grandfather lived in the same home. He built in 1952 when he passed. He had no extra homes. He drove a one car. So every dollar he made went back into the company in some form. He grew from one truck to over 1,000 vehicles, including wireline trucks and pump trucks and similar. And so it was that mindset that came from really growing up in the Great Depression and that humble background, that where he put ethics and he put families before his personal wealth and our family's personal wealth. So every dollar he made went back in, one truck at a time, no private equity, no public backing, just us, just him. And so that set the standard, and it's something that I don't think exists anywhere else.
Do you think, now that mentality is a part of, your business, is it almost second nature now to continue to do that? Because I know when I think about myself, I think about and try to take the business lessons and try to maybe fit them into a personal perspective for somebody who may be out in the business world or transitioning out of the military. I think, even for myself, as I said, can be very short-sighted and have a lack of patience. Are those kind of characteristics that having patience, being thrifty, taking the time to care for the people around you, is that something that has now become second nature for you? Is that something that you've maybe had to learn too as a leader in the business?
Sure. I think it comes down to your passion, and my grandfather's passion, my father's passion, who runs the company now, is the families that we employ. And so with always having that as a background, it gives us a little bit of a room for error. And so that conservative approach is with us in every direction, every acquisition, every choice, every decision we make, especially when it comes to capital. There's nothing worse than having to let people go, especially ones who've been with you for decades. It's a heartbreaking event, and we're fortunate with the foundation that Fesco has to be very limited to that. Now, that doesn't guarantee our success and coming out of this recession at all. We're going to have to fight the biggest battle of our 71 years.
So is that something that you're looking at now? Is there maybe something in the future that makes you either optimistic about business, or is there, an approach that you think you might be able to bring to the business to add a different way of approaching business or to grow it, or kind of what's your perspective on the future of not only the industry, but of Fesco?
Sure. I think, we have a built-in advantage without a doubt. And it's 85-90% of what we're doing is why we're still here. Now, there comes a time that the entire industry over the last probably 5 years has completely changed. And so what worked for the first 65 years isn't going to work for the past 5-6 years and then going forward. So we're going to have to be very focused on making some pivots. What we excel at is having the absolute best personnel in the industry. A lot of folks will say that it's proven with our team. I would put our guys against anybody in the world when it comes to the services we provide. So we have that advantage right there. We've got the best equipment in the industry. Now, what we're going to have to do to survive, the blueprint of Fesco was to have enough cash on hand to survive a downturn and then be successful during the upturn. So during the 15 and 16 downturn, we didn't lay anybody off. Well, what it did was it ate up that capital. In hindsight, 2017, it certainly didn't feel like it at the time, but hindsight 2017 through Q1 2020 were the best economic times that we'll probably have for the next few years. So we're going back and we're looking at those numbers, those services, those districts. How could we have come out stronger? And so we're preparing to come out with those revisions after a deep look in the mirror and see how we can improve as a company. And that's going to be a lot of pivoting for sure.
Yeah. Is there, for a business that's been in operation for over 70 years, that has, just a really solid culture and structure and set of characteristics, is there any chafing in your mind of how do I take something that has been so successful for so long and either pivot it, or does it feel natural?
It feels natural. I tell our guys all the time, especially new ones that have come into the industry, there's not a better company to come work for. Everything's already, all the kinks have already been fixed. The if our guys will come in and just learn from our trainers, which are all have 30 plus years as former Fesco managers who stayed on, if they'll go through the checklists, if they'll have meetings after jobs, there's no reason for any errors going forward. So that takes out that learning curve by being surrounded by the best people in the industry for our specific services. And so that's the easiest part. From there, we have to start vertically integrating. We have to get our story out. We have to grow our services. We have to increase our market share during this downtime. And unfortunately, there's companies that aren't going to survive. Yep. And we need to be there to pick up that load, even hire some of those personnel possibly. But at the end of the day, we need to protect the ship, being Fesco, and our personnel, and make sure that they can continue having a high quality of life. But they're committed. Our guys, our team understands, whether it be the men out in the field or the support staff, the men and women in the shops assisting. We all understand what we're looking at, and it's the darkest time frame that I'm aware of. We're way worse than the 80s crash. And so everybody understands, and we're pulling in the right direction. We've got a great team, great managers. And so there's a few tweaks when it comes to marketing, get our name out there. Some technology advances in both the field application, the finance application. And so we understand that. We understand we're an imperfect company. And so we'll continue to grow and evolve so that we can come out of this terrible situation much stronger.
So I'm gonna ask you a little bit more of a personal question here, instead of just strictly from the business itself. As somebody who grew up around the business and watched it grow from the ground up, was there ever a time where you thought about working in a different industry?
Not a different industry at all. I grew up in a small town in South Texas, Alice, where you were either oil and gas in some form or fashion, or ranching or farming. And I went to Texas Tech, which really is not that different. But what was different was the different cultures and cities that some of my friends, being in a fraternity and being active in sports and what have you up there, you got a lot of different input. It was a melting pot that I was not accustomed to. It was a culture shock to a degree. And then moving from there to Dallas as an operations engineer and eventually getting to senior engineer, utilizing my petroleum engineering degree, but being with different successful people, whether that be in finance through private equity or real estate or some other form of engineering, it was, I got around it and I tried to absorb as much as possible. Now, in retrospect, maybe energy it's been difficult since I came back home. There hasn't really been a time frame where I missed the Eagle-Ford, or I missed the 2010 through 2014 boom to a degree. And so since I've been back, and it was kind of joked that, well, maybe I'm kind of the genesis of the difficulties coming back home. But it's been challenging, but it's the finest industry there is. And I remember 20 years ago, my dad telling me that the OFS sector, the oil field service sector, is the last true service. And what he meant by that was, if you go to Costco, or if you go to the mall, or if you go to a Starbucks, or you go anywhere and you have poor service, chances are you're going to go back. Our line of the industry, if you have one poor performance, your data is inaccurate, you have any operational issues, there's 20 companies waiting to replace you, and you will be replaced. And so there's a lot of consequences to poor service. And so it's a challenging service or industry that I thoroughly enjoy and proud to be a part of. And I'm committed. We're in.
I love it. I'm interested to know, for the audience to know the story about your grandfather, how he built the first truck that started the business.
Sure. And like I said, I love telling the story. I don't think it's told enough. And so that's part of our team, and what we're trying to do is get our name back out there. There was a time frame where if I went and met with an engineer or a operations manager that was 45, 50 years old or older, they'd say, Fesco's a great company, never sold out, great service, what a story. But if you go meet with my age or a little younger, don't know, don't care. But once you tell the story, it really increases that bond and that mutual respect, and it's a tremendous benefit. So my grandfather was a petroleum engineer. He went off to, he started his degree, war broke out, went out in the South Pacific. The war was over, he came back, finished his petroleum engineering degree at University of Texas in Austin, where he met my grandmother. He went out, was working in oil field services for a couple of years and found a niche. And so he and a gentleman named Garmin Kimmel, who went on to start Kimray, multi-billion-dollar worldwide company. My grandfather and my grandmother moved into his basement in Oklahoma City and built our first split-stream lab truck to sample gas wells in deep South Texas. And so he built that, spent several months, finished it up in the winter of 1948, drove it from Oklahoma City to Dallas, Texas. He grew up in Dallas, so he had no family in South Texas, but it was the busy spot for deep, high-pressure natural gas wells. And so he started that Fesco with that one truck and has slowly expanded it. We still have the truck. It's on our website, fescoinc.com. And so it's a wonderful story. And he built it one truck literally at a time, one office at a time. And with that commitment to detail and the precision, accuracy, ethics, morals, everything that's great about the greatest generation, truly.
So from one truck, how large has the business grown?
Our peak was in 2014. We had about 1,300 employees. Currently, we have more vehicles than we have employees, so we're trying to right size as a company. It's a task where we've got small overhead, a very low overhead from a corporate standpoint, and so we're trying to multitask, wear a lot of hats. But it's grown. It's an extremely impressive company. We've probably been a little too humble about it, which might have hurt our market share in the last decade. So we're trying to stay humble, but we're confident in our company. We're confident in the people who work for us, and we're confident we're going to get through this time.
And it's a nationwide business as well, right?
Correct. We are.
Where else are y'all operating outside of Texas then?
What was that?
Where are y'all operating outside of Texas then?
So we work the Permian Basin, which is both the east corner of New Mexico, West Texas. We work the Eagle Ford Shale, which is San Antonio area, spanning south of Houston down to Laredo. We have offices in the Valley, Edinburgh area, East Texas for the Haynesville Shale play, and then we have an Appalachia region that services West Virginia, Ohio, and Pennsylvania.
Well, tell you what, I want to wrap it up with this. Is there any last word that you would like to provide to a veteran either looking at the industry right now, or maybe a veteran who has somebody in the armed forces who may be leaving the military in the next month, 2, 3, or 4? They've seen the economy change. They've seen oil and gas change as well. What's kind of the message that you would want to leave them?
The message would be you're wanted. There's a position for you. Our Appalachia regional manager, who's not with us anymore, he retired, but he was a sergeant major. And so his blueprint was to hire from bases and bring in these personnel who the culture, personalities mesh well with what we're doing. And there's not an industry that I'm aware of that is more proud of the veteran group, the military, from the operators who are sponsoring events all the time to the service companies who thrive off bringing in veterans. It's a tough, rewarding lifestyle. They'll fit in perfectly. But the moral of the story is they're wanted, they're needed, and we appreciate everything they've done for us.
Well, Justin, it's an incredible conversation, an incredible business, and really just an all-American story. I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show with us today and tell us not only the story about Fesco, where it has been, the importance of its values, but also where it's going to be going in the future as well.
Sure thing. We appreciate it, Dan.
Absolutely. On behalf of Chairman George P. Bush and the Texas Veterans Land Board, we hope you all have enjoyed the at-home series of Voices of Veterans, the Next Gen Warrior Show. We are going to continue to provide stories like Justin's to continue to motivate and inspire while we go through unpredictable times. We appreciate you sticking with Next Gen Warrior. Please share, tell a friend, and let's promote the success stories of veterans across our great nation. Thank you for watching. We will see you next time.
Follow us on Instagram at Voices of Vets, on Twitter at Voice of Veterans, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Voices of Veterans. To hear more, please visit voicesofveterans.org. Join us in sharing the success stories of Texas veterans. Thank you for joining us for the Next Gen Warrior Podcast.